This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. The European Commission on Wednesday unveiled a €210 billion plan for Europe to end its reliance on Russian fossil fuels by 2027, and to use the pivot away from Moscow to quicken its transition to green energy. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia, Europe's top gas supplier, has prompted the European Union to rethink its energy policies amid sharpened concerns of supply shocks. Russia supplies 40% of the bloc's gas and 27% of its imported oil, and EU countries are struggling to agree sanctions on the latter. To wean countries off those fuels, Brussels proposed a three-pronged plan: a switch to import more non-Russian gas, a faster rollout of renewable energy, and more effort to save energy.
Record high gasoline and diesel prices in the United States are drawing a growing flow of tankers from Europe, where pump prices are lingering near record highs. So far in May, Europe has exported around 540,000 barrels per day of gasoline on the transatlantic route, close to the highest level since July 2019, data from oil analytics firm Vortexa show. And gasoline exports from Europe to the U.S. East Coast are expected to rise to their highest in at least 3 years in May, according to industry sources. Traders regularly move oil on tankers between regions to where they can make a bigger profit, in what is known as an arbitrage.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Oil prices rose on Wednesday on expectations that easing COVID-19 restrictions in China will boost demand and as supply concerns grew. Brent crude was up $1.69, or 1.5%, at $113.62 a barrel at 11:50 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude climbed $2.26, or 2%, to $114.66 a barrel, reversing some of the previous session's losses. Hopes of further lockdown easing in China boosted expectations for demand recovery. The country's authorities allowed 864 of Shanghai's financial institutions to resume work, sources said on Wednesday, a day after the Chinese city achieved a milestone of 3 consecutive days with no new COVID cases outside quarantine zones.
China's gasoline exports fell by a third in April from a year earlier but were higher than expected as refiners cut bulging inventories in the face of sliding domestic demand under COVID-19 lockdowns, Chinese customs data showed on Wednesday. Chinese refiners had been expected to slash April fuel exports to pre-EMPT domestic shortages amid the Ukraine crisis, but later ramped up overseas shipments as COVID-19 restrictions cut deep into fuel consumption. China exported 980,000 tons of gasoline last month, data from the General Administration of Customs showed, down from 1.16 million tons in March and 1.47 million tons a year earlier.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
China's aluminium imports fell 37.7% in April from the same month a year earlier as overseas prices rose and domestic consumption weakened, government data showed on Wednesday. Imports of unwrought aluminium and products, including primary metal and unwrought, alloyed aluminium, stood at 175,289 tons last month, down from 281,139 tons in April 2021 and fell 11.1% from March. China, the world's top aluminium producer and consumer, has imported less than 200,000 tons of the metal for 4 straight months, as an arbitrage window for cheaper overseas metal shut and downstream demand faltered in the face of the country's COVID-19 outbreak.
China's CNGR Advanced Material Company Limited will invest in 3 new projects in Indonesia to produce nickel matte, aiming to increase annual capacity by 120,000 tons to meet increasing demand for the product used in making electric car batteries. In a filing to the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, the battery material maker said on Wednesday that 3 of its Hong Kong units signed agreements with a Singapore-based Rigqueza International Private Limited to jointly invest in the 3 projects in Wida Bay Industrial Park. Each involves investment of $420 million and aims to produce nickel matte with 40,000 tons of nickel content per year via 4 production lines, the filing said. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. UN Chief Antonio Guterres is expected to publicly disclose on Wednesday that he is in talks with Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, the United States and the European Union aimed at restoring Ukraine grain shipments and reviving fertilizer exports from Russia and Belarus, UN officials said. The war in Ukraine has fueled soaring global prices for grains, cooking oils, fuel and fertilizer, and Guterres has warned it will worsen food, energy and economic crises in poor countries. Ukraine, a major agricultural producer, used to export most of its goods through seaports, but since Russia's February 24 invasion it has been forced to export by train via its western border or via its small Danube river ports.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.